One Piece went from, pirate story, I guess I have time to kill, to,
oh my god, this is awesome!
oh my god, why am I so sad? Prison Break? Oda, you madman, I'm in. And eventually ended up at,
First off, eggs, sugar, butter.
Boku wa chef! I'm a die-hard One Piece fan, but let's be honest, One Piece doesn't hit like it used to, and the numbers agree with me. People are quick to point at problems like the pacing, lack of depth, or character designs as the fatal flaws of One Piece, but if you use your brain, they're wrong. 2008, One Piece peaked at a staggering 37 million volume sales, and it's been downhill ever since. That was the year the Sabaody Archipelago arc came to an end and started the stretch of One Piece that doomed the series forever. Warning! Spoilers up to the Marineford arc. I'm Ken-chan, and today I present the problem with One Piece. Or whatever I named this video. I'll cut right to the chase. It's all Oda's fault. He's the problem. I know, it must sound dumb. Oh, the guy who's writing the story is the reason it's not good. You don't say. But here's what I mean. He's been making a lot of conscious decisions that have actively reduced the quality of his storytelling. What makes One Piece special? The boats make you cry, the zombies make you laugh, and the newspapers. Before the time skip, One Piece was all about the adventure, the sights we saw and the friends we made along the way. Since the time skip, One Piece became about the destination. We don't have stopovers on deserted little islands to meet Gaimon and hear about his precious treasure. We don't get to bask in the glory of the mighty giants and witness their warrior spirits clash in ancient duel. We don't get to see Shanks. Well, we never got to see Shanks, but my point is those little moments that made One Piece feel real and alive aren't in the story anymore. The finer details all get lost in the bigger picture. Oda does this for a reason, something very specific most of you already figured out, and I understand. He wants to quit. Oda's had enough. He wants out. He didn't sign up for this, and I can't blame him. He's getting old, he's been promising his family he was almost done for the last 20 years, and he hasn't had a chance to escape. This job is bad for his health, the schedule is unmanageable, and he can't power through like a machine the way he used to. In the most recent chapter of One Piece, don't worry, no spoilers, he wasn't even able to finish drawing the manuscript because it's all becoming too much. This series has been running weekly for almost 30 years, and that takes a toll on someone. So while I can't blame him and I respect his decision, I'm still going to present the facts about how he has reduced the quality of One Piece, besides cutting down on the side quests. Number 1. SBS Backstories. Pre-time skip, it was unthinkable for Oda to leave out information that developed a character from the main manga. But if you've been keeping up with the Q&As he does every volume, you'll notice that's no longer the case. These aren't spoilers because they weren't actually in the manga, Oda just answered when asked, but Zoro's family tree and history, a major character, useless Captain Mid's backstory, and even the secret romance between Koby and a named character and how it all started were brushed over in a few sentences between character birthdays and dietary preferences. If you only watch the anime or read the weekly chapters, you'd never know the details behind these characters that brought them where they are today, and you'd never be given the chance to connect with their stories of joy or tragedy the way we do with the hundreds of characters given their own spotlight earlier in the story. This is even sadder when we think about the next way Oda has degraded One Piece: skipping arcs. This criticism might be a bit unfair of me considering he was adding arcs that shouldn't have existed earlier in One Piece, but in an effort to overcorrect for his youthful folly, he's reduced the number of stops on our voyage at every possible opportunity. Any characters, groups, or plot beats that could be thrown together have been, like the Big Mom Pirates and the Germa 66. Despite how well Oda may have handled this, there are obvious issues. To make room for the huge roster of new characters being introduced and developed, we had to say goodbye to half the crew for 2 years of serialization, and the Straw Hats ended up facing a foe too strong too early for the sake of plot progression. I'm not against characters facing apparently insurmountable odds, I just want sensible and narratively satisfying resolutions to such events, not months of Shokugeki no Sanji. Even more recently in Wano, because Oda had saved up way too many characters to ever reasonably give their own time to shine, we have characters like Apu or Hawkins who were really only included so Oda could check their boxes as characters who have served a purpose without really contributing anything meaningful to the story. And while we're on the topic of rushing things, problem number 3. Paneling. While this may be manga only, it's really hard to forgive Oda doing his best Togashi impression whenever he has the chance. To cover as much as possible per chapter, the portrayal of fights isn't nearly as visible as it used to be. Key visuals are being compressed and losing their impact as story-defining moments, and honestly, it's just hard to tell what you're looking at sometimes. And this is a lot of the reason why it has become a reasonable debate recently about whether the anime or manga has been a better medium to consume One Piece. I am team manga all the way, but I have to give credit where it's due. While Oda has paid progressively less attention to detail in the manga, the anime polishing up the story with skipped scenes, great sound and improved visuals, and increased focus on characters has really made it a worthwhile adaptation to watch. As someone who watches anime at 1.5 times speed in general though, it's still not enough to get me to watch it regularly though. I'm sorry. Before, I said that pacing wasn't the problem with One Piece I was here to talk about because it obviously wasn't responsible for the drop in sales, and it's time to explain all the claims I made. First of all, I won't grace the bad character design allegations with a formal debunking because that would imply there was even something there to argue. Second, considering One Piece peaked in the year of the Sabaody Archipelago and Impel Down arcs, whether you think the pacing is good or not, there's no way it's the reason One Piece has seen less commercial success in recent years because it was slow while One Piece was on the rise and slow while One Piece was on the decline. Even though I think Dressrosa having more episodes than the 100 chapters it lasted in the manga was sinful, we can't act like we enjoyed sitting through Skypiea. That was one of the hardest arcs for me to watch in this series, and it was way before One Piece was in the GOAT conversation. Last, people raising their pitchforks demanding for the deaths of characters for the story to be good are just idiots. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against killing characters, and I appreciate the avenues it provides for the development of those they leave behind, but wildly slaughtering the entire cast would make the story far less interesting. The most important aspects of storytelling for investing an audience in a conflict are narrative tension and stakes. That means we shouldn't know whether the protagonists will be able to overcome an obstacle, and there should be serious consequences if they fail. One Piece is Luffy's story. He's not going to die before his story has been told, and all the Straw Hats are an extension of him, and their dreams extensions of his own, so they're all safe too. Trying to set the stakes as their death in every conflict would be stupid and unthreatening because we know they'll never lose with their lives on the line. That's where the idea of plot armor in modern shonen anime and manga comes from, setting unrealistic consequences for failures. The solution to this problem should be obvious. Create stakes that don't endanger the lives of characters, right? Well, there's a problem with that too. Tension. If Zoro challenges Luffy to a duel and the loser has to wash the dishes for a week, even though the stakes are so low that Oda could have either character win without endangering the story, it'll feel like a waste of time no one cares about because the story doesn't progress either way. That's where good writing comes in, balancing stakes and tension. What's the worst possible thing that could happen to the Straw Hats if they lose? Well, short of dying, the crew being ripped apart. I've mentioned this a few times, but now let's actually talk about the Sabaody Archipelago arc, the Straw Hats' lowest moment and the manga's highest. This was devastating. Up until this point, the power of friendship had always prevailed. No matter what threats the Straw Hats faced, they were able to go plus ultra and overcome it, so we were expecting the same here, and that just didn't happen. Luffy punches a celestial dragon. These entities they were warned the whole arc not to mess with under any circumstances. And honestly, if you were reading this as it serialized at the time, you were probably thinking, time for Luffy to flex his plot armor, no one messes with his friends. The Marines showed up and they were beaten, so it was time to get out of there. Then these pacifista things showed up, and the one unit they faced was the strongest enemy they'd ever gone up against, requiring the full force of the entire crew to finally bring it down. And this is usually where the arc would end in a shonen, as they sail off and learn about these fierce murder machines the government is mass producing. But that wasn't it. Pacifista Commander Sentomaru with yet another unit appears when the crew is completely worn out from the first fight. They try to split up and run, but they can't. Navy Admiral Kizaru appears and they're blocked off on all sides. Zoro, still wounded from Thriller Bark, is almost killed, but Rayleigh appears to save the day. This is usually another point where the character who appears holds all the enemies back so the protagonists can escape, but that doesn't happen either. Just holding back Kizaru is all he can manage, so the Straw Hats are brought to the brink of death by PX1 and Sentomaru, who appear undefeatable, before the real Kuma appears on top of that and causes the Straw Hats to just vanish, one by one. We saw him do this to Perona and Thriller Bark, so we know they're all gone for good, and as Luffy fails to protect them, or their dreams, he breaks down. We see almost immediately after this that Luffy's alive and was just sent away, but that doesn't change how emotionally powerful and narratively impactful this loss was. The crew is broken up and we have no idea where any of them ended up. If they found themselves in places as hostile as Amazon Lily, anyone as injured as Zoro was doomed. For most of us, we had in some way, shape, or form found out just how long One Piece was, knew about the impending time skip, and had seen the redesigned Straw Hats long before we actually got to that point in the story. But you have to understand that as this was airing, the Straw Hat Pirates had truly been eradicated, and everyone's dreams were on their last legs. As Luffy adventured on Amazon Lily, then Impel Down, and eventually Marineford, he no longer had his crew, and neither he nor us as the audience knew what happened to the rest of them. For years of serialization, there was no quest for the One Piece, no journey to be the Pirate King, and no Straw Hat Pirates. That's why the sales boomed. The future of the story was 100% in question and no one had any idea what was going to happen next. Word of this probably spread. People who had casually stumbled upon it in Weekly Shonen Jump magazine went and bought entire backlogs of the manga to figure out how things ended up this way. And the entire manga world was at the edge of their seats and hopping on the bandwagon to see what new direction One Piece was taking. All without a single character having died to this point in the story. In case you forgot what I'm arguing about here, it's that One Piece didn't fall off because Oda refused to kill characters. One Piece actually peaked because of the choice not to. I'm not going to dive too deep into hypotheticals, but at the time, there were questions about whether Luffy would start a new journey around the world to gather his crew back together, whether the new friends he made during the Marineford saga would join his crew, whether we'd get arcs for the other Straw Hats like we had with Luffy, and whether they'd end up dying because they'd ended up alone. If all the Straw Hats had died, we would have had a similar moment of intense emotion to wrap up the Sabaody Archipelago arc, before all the color and everything lovable about the story would be robbed from it. Again, I'm not against deaths. I sobbed when Luffy broke down after the death of Ace. That was masterfully executed. Oda took the effort of believably freeing Ace just to make his death sting harder when we thought we were out of the woods, so we could truly resonate with the grief our protagonist was experiencing. And that developed characters and progressed the plot. I'll also be doubly fair and concede that there were indeed times when the survival of a character like Pell undermined his sacrifice and did nothing to contribute to the story, but the point remains that as long as death isn't proposed as the consequence in unreasonable situations, failing to kill characters does not take away from how interesting a story can be. With my agendas pushed and taken care of, time to come clean. While it's true that volume sales have dropped over the years, that's not a fair measure of One Piece's popularity. With the advent of the internet, most viewers live their own lives of piracy, if you know what I mean. Between that, official sources like Crunchyroll and Manga Plus providing convenience, and the general decline in sales of printed media, it's pretty easy to understand why the volumes just don't do the numbers they used to. It's a complicated argument though, because One Piece has relinquished its throne as the perennial king of sales, so it's not drawing people to the shelves as well as other series do, but maybe that's because everyone already has their One Piece backlog while they don't for other stories, so as I said, complicated. While this doesn't take into account or measure satisfaction, the only way we really have to track the online change in popularity over the years is Google Trends, and honestly, these results make sense. Between the White Warrior of Liberation and ending of the longest arc in the anime, and the highly anticipated curse-breaking live-action Netflix One Piece finally being released, this was one hell of a year for the One Piece agenda. It's just that I can't use this as a measure of literary success when it just says how much One Piece is talked about, for better or worse. We went on 30,000 tangents, but One Piece has fallen off, and it's solely because Oda wants to put down the pen and call it a career. I should know I stopped working on coding the One Piece game I was making to break the anime game curse because I couldn't get enough subscribers to start crowdfunding, and working on it alone was ruining my health, so I know where Oda's coming from. I was actually going to include a second segment in all my videos, starting with this one where I just tell you guys stories about my life, so you like me get attached and subscribe, but this script looks stupid long already, so there's no chance of that. It was going to be about what I coded in the game, the mechanics, and all that good stuff since I never wrapped it up for everyone, but I guess that'll wait for my next One Piece video. Until then, thanks to the patrons Bolivar Sanchez, Lucas HF, and Grog for carrying the channel. This has been Kenchan, reaching.